Transformations, Women, Gender, and Psychology, 3rd edition, by Mary Crawford. Chapter 6 continued. Gendered Identities, Childhood, and Adolescence. Gender Intensifications. In a 3-generational study of college students, their mothers, and their grandmothers, a majority said they had been tomboys during childhood. Most had given up their tomboy ways at around 12 and a half, but it wasn't due to the physical changes of puberty. They still liked active, adventurous play, but they reported that they had quieted down due to social pressure to be feminine. The shift from tomboy to young lady illustrates the process of gender intensification, or increased pressure to conform to gender roles, beginning in early adolescence. By the time they are 11 or 12 years of age, girls share to get more messages from parents, other adults, and peers to act feminine, stake their self-esteem on being attractive, and conform to social norms for females. It's not that girls necessarily believe they are really more feminine now, and boys that they are any more masculine, but rather that their roles and behaviors change. For example, they become more gender typed in their household chores and spend more time with their same-sex parents. As you might expect, the timing of puberty affects the timing of these messages. The earlier a girl menstruates, the earlier she is subject to gender intensification. On the other hand, early maturity may make a girl more popular with boys. Early maturing girls date more than late maturing girls and are more likely to get involved with boyfriends in middle school and junior high. On the other hand, early maturing girls experience a more stressful adolescence. For example, they get lower grades and score lower on achievement tests than later menstruating girls. They engage in more risky behaviors such as smoking, drinking, and early sexual intercourse, and they have higher rates of depression and eating disorders than late maturing girls. Although early maturation is associated with a host of developmental problems for girls, This timing effects may occur because early maturing girls tend to become part of an older, more experienced peer group involved in activities that they imitate. Pressure can come from adults, too, who expect a physical mature girl to behave like an adult woman, as discussed in Chapter 3. Physical characteristics are particularly important in triggering gender stereotypes. However, a 12-year-old girl with the body of a woman is still a 12-year-old girl emotionally, cognitively, and in her life experience. Vulnerabilities of adolescence. The transition from childhood to adulthood has traditionally been thought of as a time of increasing self-confidence and competence. However, for girls, adolescence may be a timing of decreasing self-confidence and self-esteem, as they learn that speaking out and being themselves leads to trouble, and that others seem to value only their appearance. Who is this new self? Interviews with adolescent girls during the middle school and junior high years showed that many stifled their own feelings at thought in an effort to fit in and be seen as a nice girl, a phenomenon termed self-silencing. The girls in this study were from privileged backgrounds and attended a private school. However, they are not the only ones to experience self-silencing. In another study, girls from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds were asked to complete the sentence. What gets me into trouble is more than half the girls answered my mouth, or my big mouth. In a Canadian study of 149 teen girls who had eating disorders, self-silencing was strongly correlated with their symptoms. The more anxious they were about social acceptance, the more they were dissatisfied with their bodies, and the more they strove to be thin. Self-silencing can be contrasted with relational authenticity, the congruence between what a girl thinks and feels and what she does in relationship situations. In other words, how much a girl is able to be herself. Authenticity can promote psychological health and well-being. Self-silencing and a loss of authenticity may occur among adolescent girls because they come up against a wall of shoulds in which approval is associated with their silence. The pressure to be a perfect girl, not just pretty and smart, but always nice and polite, never angry or oppositional, leads a girl to doubt the truth of her own knowledge and feelings. Self-esteem refers to a person's overall level of positive self-regard and self-respect. It is measured by asking people to agree or disagree with statements such as, I feel good about myself and who I am. Do adolescent girls suffer from low self-esteem? Meta-analysis of hundreds of studies of self-esteem in children and adults of all ages showed that boys and men scored higher than girls and women. This difference is very small in elementary school, increases in middle school, and is large in high school. When different ethnic samples were examined separately, the gender self-esteem gap occurred only among European Americans. Self-esteem was also related to social classes, with the gender gap largest in economical disadvantaged groups. In other words, a girl's self-esteem is dependent not only on her gender but also on other factors that influence her place in society. And the notion that all adolescent girls suffer from just drastically low self-esteem is a recent media myth. The moderate gender group in self-esteem scores actually has remained stable since 1991. Low self-esteem, when it does occur, is a cause of concern because it is linked to problems with psychological adjustments, physical health, and life satisfaction. One reason that an adolescent may develop self-esteem issues is that appearance becomes much more important socially. Of course, this is true for boys as well as girls. In a Canadian study of 7th to 11th graders, over one-third of both girls and boys said that their overall self-esteem was determined by their appearance. But girls more than boys find their flesh figuratively and literally squeezed into an unrealistic beauty ideal. The body that was once an ally in exploring the world now becomes an adversary that must be forced into submission to an artificial appearance standard. Girls' self-surveillance, body dissatisfaction, and body shame all increase at puberty. I like my behind. I don't care what anybody says. I love myself. You're supposed to think of yourself as beautiful, and I think I'm beautiful. But I can make myself look more beautiful if I lose weight. I don't like my stomach or my thighs. There's so much focus on, weight and stuff, and people are put into, their categories, they're either, fat or you're acceptable. But when we have the workshops that come around and they're you're perfect the way you are and everything like that, most of the girls, we just sit there and that's a load of crap. We know that that's not true because the first impression is what you look like. These are the voices of girls. The first two are 13-year-old African American girls in an interview study about their body image. The second two are Australian high school students in an all-girls school. In their voice, we can hear the universal struggle of adolescent girls as they realize that their appearance in the eyes of others is the most important thing about them. In our media-saturated culture, they can hardly escape the realization for a moment, and media exposure is strongly related to their distress. In a study of 11-year-old girls, exposures to magazines, internet use, and the amount of appearance talk among their friends predicted their self-objectification and body shame, which in turn led to dieting and symptoms of depression. In a study of 11 to 18-year-olds in the Netherlands, use of social media predicted more investment in their appearance and more interest in getting cosmetic surgery for both boys and girls. The good news is that self-objectification among teens seems to decrease over time. In a longitudinal study that followed 587 white and Latina girls from the ages of 13 to 18, body objectification dropped and self-esteem rose during the high school years. Girls who decreased the most in self-objectification had the highest self-esteem and fewest depression symptoms. Peer culture and harassment. A school principal in Maine described an incident in which the girls said that the boys were scaring them, saying, "You're my girlfriend, and I'm going to marry you, and we're going to have sex." It got pretty aggressive and really loud, and pretty soon there were lots of things coming out from all the boys. "Yeah, we're going to have sex with you, and yeah, we're going to rape you, we're going to kill you, and yeah, 'cause you're our girlfriend." And then one boy said, "I'm going to put an engagement ring on you, 'cause that's what you do when you love someone, but I'm going to nail it on till the blood comes out." These children were 6 and 7-year-olds, too young to fully understand the meaning of words like sex and rape. They nevertheless acted out a scenario of masculine dominance. The boys felt powerful using hostile language they knew would strongly affect the girls. The girls felt uncomfortable, frightened, and angry. Research shows that gender-related harassment by peers is prevalent in school and that it intensifies as children reach adolescence. When the American Association of Universities Women conducted a national survey of students in grades 8 through 11, they found that 83% of girls and 79% of boys had experienced harassment. This included behaviors such as spreading sexual rumors, making remarks about one's body or sexuality, forced kissing, and unwanted touching. White girls reported the most sexual harassment, followed by African Americans and Latinas. Although the overall rates were nearly gender equal, the consequences were not. In this study, as well as others, boys tended to view sexualized attention as flattering. They reported that it makes them feel proud of themselves. Girls were much more likely to report that it makes them feel frightened, self-conscious, and embarrassed. Research has shown that peer sexual harassment increases girls' self-surveillance and body shame, which is linked to negative psychological and physical health consequences. Some studies show that boys get even more harassment than girls do because they are targeted by other boys. In other studies, girls are more often the targets. In a large study of 14 and 15-year-old students in the Netherlands, girls are more than twice as likely as boys to report incidents of unwanted sexual attention at school. For boys, the most common forms were verbal taunts such as gay or homo. For girls, there was more physical harassment, as one girl reported, "I was pawed and blocked. I was very frightened and helpless." It was a group of boys. In an interview study of Australian high school students and teachers, both boys and girls reported that boys taunted girls with names like whore, bitch, slut, and skank, as well as comments on body shape, whale, and specific body parts, flat-chested, watermelons, nice arse. Some boys reported that guys just go up to a girl and grab her tits. It's not that different in U.S. schools. In a large representative sample of over 18,000 U.S. high school students, 37% of girls reported having been sexually harassed within the past year, and boys were 2.5 times more likely to report being perpetrators. When students in a Midwestern middle school whose average age was 12 were surveyed, the majority had experienced or seen sexual harassment in the hallways, cafeteria, classrooms, and gym classes at their school. More than 1/3 of both boys and girls said that they had someone say hurtful things about their body or how they looked, and 60% had witnessed others calling a student sexual names. Over many studies, the pattern that emerges is one of homophobic name-calling directed at boys by boys, and a wider range of sexual and sexist harassment directed at girls by both boys and girls. Gender non-conforming students experience more peer harassment than any other group. In an internet survey of 5,907 LGBT students aged 13 to 18, 72% of lesbian queer girls, 66% of bisexual girls, and gay and queer boys, and 81% of transgender youth reporting having been sexually harassed within the past year. A striking feature of peer gender harassment among children and teens is that it often takes place in full view of adults. who may do little to stop it. Often, teachers stand by and watch without comment as sexual teasing and harassments take place, which provides a powerful message to both boys and girls. Girls may report harassment only to be told, "Boys will be boys." In a particularly horrifying incident, gang rapes of female students were reported at a major Japanese university. In response, a member of parliament said in public forum, "Boys who commit group rape are in good shape. I think they are rather normal." Whoops, I shouldn't have said that. Girls may be encouraged to interpret their experience of gender-related harassment and hostility in terms of heterosexual romance. For example, after the "we're gonna rape you" incident described earlier, 7-year-old Melissa struggled to understand how boys who she thought were her friends could be so hostile. She was comforted when she remembered that her grandfather had told her, "If boys chase you, that means they love you." Although Melissa's grandfather probably meant well, I doubt whether this is a good lesson for Melissa to learn. For more on the ideology of heterosexual romance and its relationship to violence against girls and women, see chapters 7 and 12. Unfortunately, teachers may also be perpetrators of sexual harassment. Students of all ages are legally protected from all sexual contact with teachers. However, teacher-student sexual harassment is amply documented. A survey of high school students in the Netherlands found that 77% of the reported unwanted sexual behavior at school was done by a teacher, principal, or other adult authority. The perpetrators were overwhelmingly male, the victims mostly female. Teacher harassment was more severe and led to more negative psychological consequences than peer harassment. The power imbalance between teachers and students leads to underreporting of this kind of violence because students are afraid of the consequences. When a 13-year-old Japanese girl brought charges against her 51-year-old teacher for fondling her in the school office, more than 40 teachers signed a petition asking that he should be treated leniently. The girl was rejected by her classmates, and her best friend told her that she had ruined the teacher's life. The girl replied that it had been the other way around. Making a difference. Feminists have maintained that raising children to be highly gender-typed is harmful to boys and girls because it closes off possibilities for both. As long as kids are being raised to believe that there are certain things they cannot or should not do because of their gender, society is losing potentially unique contributions and individuals are losing potential sources of fulfillment. Transforming social interaction, enlarging the option for girls. Many feminist researchers and parents have explored alternative approaches to bringing up children. First, what example can parents offer? Children who grow up in families where parents share childcare and housework are less gender-typed in the preschool years than those who grow up in more traditional families. Those whose mothers work in gender-neutral or male-dominated occupations have less gender-typed interests and beliefs. Parents can start by becoming more flexible in their expectations for their children. Rather than pushing them into gender-stereotyped activities, they can offer gender-neutral toys and counter stereotypical examples of people and activities in daily life. Picture books with nurturing man, a strong woman. Even when their preschoolers are most gender stereotyped, they may be storing up these experiences, and later on they will become more cognitively flexible about gender. Early sexualization can be thought of as a result of gender typing, since gender-typed girls try to be more like the women they see around them, including in the media. Media literacy, or talking to children about what's happening in the media, is one way to reduce early sexualization. Girls whose mothers talked to them about what was happening on TV were significantly less likely to self-sexualize, and this worked better than simply restricting TV usage. The same study also found that dance classes, as well as sharing spiritual values with girls, were related to reduced sexualization. It's likely that sports, a girls' soccer team, and other values, feminism, would also be protective factors. In addition, it's important to reduce sexualization in our culture and to become informed consumers of media. Several organizations such as the Spark Movement aim to draw attention to and push back against sexualization in the media. Spark is unique in that it gives a space for children and teens to write blog posts and create other medias to raise awareness. Other organizations like Common Sense Media strive to inform parents about the media their children is consuming, as well as provide tools to help parents talk to their children and encourage them to become critical consumers of media. For girls in the vulnerable teen years, the main issues are keeping a healthy identity and self-esteem, becoming comfortable with a woman's body, and expressing sexuality in relationships. We discuss the later topic in the chapter that follows. For now, let's look at the factors that foster healthy self-esteem and prevent self-objectification in adolescent girls. In one study of a diverse sample, girls were asked what made them feel good about themselves. Athletics topped the list. Girls who participate in sports do better academically and are less likely to drop out of school, and they have lower rates of stress and depression and higher self-esteem. Improved self-esteem among girls who participate in sports stems from feelings of physical competence, improved body image, and feeling less constrained by a feminine gender role. There is still a gender gap in high school sports in the U.S., with girls of every ethnic group less likely to participate than boys. This is unfortunate because it's psychologically important for girls to experience being in the body, to know their bodies as strong and capable, not just objects to be judged and rated for their looks. There is a direct empirical evidence that sports involvement is important in reducing self-objectification. In a longitudinal study of Australian girls, the more time a girl spent in sports activities, the less she objectified herself when measured a year later. Sports are not the only venue in which girls and young women can challenge the limitations of femininity by actively inhabiting their bodies. Outdoor recreation is becoming increasingly popular for women and may offer different benefits than sports. Like sports, outdoor recreation is consistent with traditional masculinity, but not with traditional femininity. The idealized feminine form does not have mass or muscle. It does not assume unbecoming postures such as those required in rock climbing. For girls and young women whose relationships with their bodies is focused on appearance concerns, trading media and mirrors for trees and trails can be a liberating experience. Outdoor educator S. Copland Arnold explains, "My experience in Outward Bound as a young woman deeply affected my sense of self-acceptance, self-esteem, and body image. I gained an appreciation for my strength and agility. Rather than an object to be adorned and perfected, my body became an ally." Another important influence that girls say helps them feel good about themselves is creative self-expression, music, art, or theater. In an ethnically and geographically diverse sample, these activities provided opportunities to meet a challenge. A reason especially important to more affluent girls, European Americans and Asian American girls, and those in urban areas, and also just because they were enjoyable or involved being with friends, most important to girls from rural areas. Creative activities like playing a musical instrument, singing in a choir, or learning to dance all demand being in the body and reduce the focus on appearance and sexualization. For example, a UK study recruited 55 14-year-old girls to learn contemporary dance. At the end of the class, their upper body strength and overall fitness had increased significantly, and their self-esteem had too. Service to others, and another experience that helps girls feel good about themselves. When more privileged girls help those who are disadvantaged, both groups benefit. In one successful program, students from a women's college served as mentors to inner city high school students who were mostly for low income Hispanic and immigrant families. The high school girls visited the college campus, participating in leadership and career workshops. Both the college students and the high school girls learned from this experience. As one college mentor said, "My friend Elizabeth has nobody to count on. She came here with nothing in her pockets to start a new life from the bottom. That is why I have learned more from her." As for the high school girls, they reported that before the mentoring program, they had never been on a college campus, knew few white people, and had never thought about going to college. As a result of the program, their goals were enlarged with their options expanded. Children from disadvantaged backgrounds particularly need mentoring to help them overcome the deficits induced by poverty. Big Brother, Big Sister program is a nationwide attempt to foster healthy development in disadvantaged children. Through mentoring, involvement in Big Brother, Big Sister has been shown to improve children's grades, academic skills, and relationships with parents and peers.